We'll start a new document in Photoshop, File, New. We want this document to be called typography or something like that, since that's the assignment that this is. And it should be 8 inches. Please make sure you are working in 8 inches by 10, 300 pixels per inch. This part in here is usually nothing we have to change. This is where you can change your background to a different color or to be transparent. I'm going to leave it as white. There's my piece of paper, so now I can start doing things. This document is all about text and font. So to start, when you have text, just click. All right, don't draw a box, just click. Those boxes work a little bit differently. To change your font size, you can change it before you type or you can change it after. In font size, this option bar up here at the top has now changed to my text options because I'm on my text tool. My font, you'll notice there are not very many choices. The standard ones are there. You can type in a number that is different, bigger, smaller, or we can also use this button beside it to hover over. So notice my mouse changes to a grabber hand with the little 2-directional arrow. And so if I click and drag, I can make it bigger or smaller, and you can see that number changing. It's a little more apparent once you've typed. This is my text color. I'm going to leave mine, it's set to blue from the last time that I used it. I will type. Now this is where you can see if you want it to be bigger. You would have to highlight your text. And now watch how when I use this slider, we can actually see it working. So it's a live slider is what it is. So I can place my text. Now to actually place it in place, I can do a couple of things. I can use this check mark that's up here at the top. That is a place in place versus this is a cancel. If I wanted to cancel out of this and say, it's not doing what I want it to do. So I can use that check mark. What I can also do is click outside of the box. You'll see that that disappeared. Or the other thing I could do is use the enter key on the keypad, not the regular enter key. That would try and make a new line. So make sure it's the enter key on the keypad that you would be using. Notice over here, what it has now done is it has created a text layer for me. So if I was going to create another one now, I could just click somewhere else, not here, because that would get me into the same box, but click somewhere else. Notice how the cursor changes. It is a little cursor eye versus a cursor eye with a box to say I'm creating a new box. So I'm going to create another one. This time I'm going to change my font size a little bit on there, just so you can see a difference between the two. And I will go with my analogous colors. So I'm going to pick a blue in here for that one. Again, check mark or enter or click outside of it. Now let's say that I wanted to rotate this text. So the rotate is in the transform tool and I do a Control-T for that. Now notice that if I'm inside the text box in that transform tool, I can move it wherever I want to move it. If I'm outside of it, my double-headed arrow changes and it's a rotate arrow. If I click and drag, I'm rotating freely. If I hold my shift key down, I rotate at 15-degree angles, and that way I can keep it perfectly straight. When you are using the shift key, make sure you let go of the mouse before you let go of the shift key. Otherwise, if you're a little bit off, it'll go off. Now, one more thing that you might do by mistake, you'll notice in the very center of here, there is this little 4-headed kind of a circle piece, little compass. That is my pivot point. So when I was rotating now, notice how it rotated around my pivot point. I can actually drag that and move it. So if I was moving it up here into the D, you see now when I rotate, it rotates in that section down there. Okay. Again, once I put it in place, I can hit my check mark key or enter or click outside of it. I'm going to drag this though while I've got it in here, and I'm going to start placing these so that they are, maybe I'll go in here and check mark. So you can just build up your pieces of text. And I'll just show you now the character tools. The character tools, when you are in a text box. So text box, I can click right on a text box to do that. But when you get a lot in there, it's sometimes hard to figure out which box you want to be on. So notice over here in my layers panel, I've got 2 different layers now of text. I can use the eyeball to temporarily shut off one of the layers, turn it back on. That way you can see which it is. But if you double click right on the T, not over here where it's the layer name, but if I double click right on the T, it will actually highlight which one you're working with. So now to get into those character possibilities, those options, character options, I'm going to turn on this button right here, is the one that I just hit. And we've got all kinds of things that we can do in there. So we can change the font size. We can change the leading between lines of text. We can use our kerning and our tracking, and we can change the height only of the letters. So when we change font size changes height and width proportionally. This would just change the height. This would change the width. So notice here, if I were to increase now my tracking, you see how those letters are spreading apart, or I could tighten my track up and I could actually squish them right over top of each other if I wanted to. So, you know, that might be kind of a cool little thing for a logo that you maybe want your two O's to be interlinked like that. And it'll do it on whatever you're highlighted on. So if I were to put this, you know, kind of out, but I wanted to just have my two O's with a tighter track, you see, I can pull those two O's and it does it that way. So tracking differences, you play around with those. Notice how I can actually change only the height and stretch it out, or I can change only the width of my letters. This doesn't change the spacing between my letters. It's just changing the width of my letters versus changing the entire font. Notice it is changing the height and the width at the same time when I change my font. So there's a few things about font, how to create it, how to place it, how to rotate it, how to transform it. And one last thing in this character panel, notice that you do have these different icons here for bold, italics, capitals, sentence case, superscript, subscript, underline, and strike through that can also be used. If you had a whole paragraph of text, then you've got some extra things over in this paragraph tab, which are your alignment, your center alignment, your indents, those kinds of things that are in there.